when it comes to the Super Bowl, who do I want to talk to? I want to talk to my buddy Stephen A. Smith. Now, he needs to catch a plane. He needs to get in there in first class, get his peanuts and his pretzels, right, Stephen A.? But that said, I want your take, baby, because I thought the Eagles and you thought the Eagles.
Well, first of all, it's always great to talk to you, number one. Secondly, great job with the interview with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I caught about 15 minutes of it or so. Did a great job, as always.
Thanks,
I would tell you the Super Bowl itself, it was shocking. I picked the Eagles to win. I picked Jalen Hurts to win the MVP, but I did not expect that kind of beatdown. That was a shocker. You got to people don't realize that we was talking about it because Saquon Barkley had their running back rushed for 2,005 yards this season, best running back in football, offensive player of the year, all of that stuff. And with their offensive line averaging 6'6", about 318 to 328 pounds, we had been talking about the Eagles and their ability to run the football and how that would rule the day. No one anticipated that the Eagles' front four defensively would just maul Patrick Mahomes all night long. Sacked a career-high 6 times, pressured 16 times during his 42 dropbacks, held to a total net yards of 23 yards, and 1 first down in the entire first half. Didn't cross midfield until the third quarter. 0 for 6 on third down conversions in the first half. Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins held to 0 receptions. It was a complete domination, the likes of which no one had ever seen transpire against Patrick Mahomes before. And this was much worse than when Tom Brady in Tampa Bay beat them 31-9 in the Super Bowl about 4 years ago. What an annihilation. That's exactly what it was. We've never seen Patrick Mahomes reduce that. For those that don't know the QBR, your QBR rating, you got 100, you got over 80. Usually that's good stuff like that, Mark. The great Patrick Mahomes had a QBR of 1 in the first half. 1. Just domination. Complete domination.
So let me ask you this. For me, I'm kind of rudimentary, but I just see what I see. So are all these teams now going to try and get these massive, big men? But, these are real athletes. They're not just massive, big men to be on their offensive and defensive lines, because I think they're going to have to move toward that.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of moving towards that. Any team worth its salt tries to get that, Mark, because you understand that football games are won and lost in the trenches. What you have on your offensive and defensive line usually determines your level of success. If you have massive bodies to lean on, you win. If you don't, you lose. And that's just the way that it goes. And so everybody's aspiring to get that. It's just that you don't have that every day. Those are not the kind of things that are available to you. And so you get the best ones that are available. They all have size, but they all don't have skill. And so that's what you have to look at. The Eagles are fortunate enough where they have both size and skill. And that's why they're sitting here tonight as the Super Bowl champions.
So they shut down Barkley. That obviously was their big focus. And
that was their focus.
That was their focus. Yes. But the Eagles have a lot of tools, don't they?
A.J. Brown, wide receiver. Devontae Smith was caught that 46-yard touchdown pass. One of the better tight ends in football in Dallas Goedert. A massive offensive line. Obviously, an offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who's proven he's head coaching material. You can expect him to be the next head coach for the New Orleans Saints. It'll be announced sometime within the next day or two. So they have all of that going on, but they also have an MVP, Super Bowl MVP, and quarterback Jalen Hurts. This was the interesting part. There were so many question marks about him and his ability to get it done. If you remember anything, he was the quarterback at Alabama years ago. He was so awful in the first half that Nick Saban, the coach at Alabama at the time, benched him in favor of Tua Tagovailoa, the now quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Tua comes off the bench, throws a game-winning touchdown that enables Alabama to beat Georgia for the national title. That was the game that Jalen Hurts was benched. He stuck around the next season before ultimately transferring to Oklahoma, takes them to the college football playoffs, but they come up short for the national title. Gets drafted in the second round by the Philadelphia Eagles, wasn't even drafted in the first round, elevates to the starting quarterback position, finished second in the league for MVP honors 2 years ago, but they lost in the Super Bowl of Kansas City 38-35, a game in which he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Then he turns around, and 2 years later, he's back again, and this time he plays just as well, but the defense, with 8 new starters on the defensive side of the ball for the Philadelphia Eagles, completely dominates Kansas City in a way that they couldn't before, and that's why the results this time were different than they were last time.
You know, you said something today that I heard in one of these clips I watched on the on your ESPN website. You said, there's been a lot of talk about Barkley, but not a lot of talk about the Eagles team. You heard about Detroit, you heard about Buffalo, you heard about the Kansas City and this, but never the Eagles team. It really was overlooked, wasn't it?
It was. We saw, but for dare I say, for the right reasons. Like, there were question marks about the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman has proven to be probably the best executive in the sport. When you look at the job that he has done, this is a guy that was once demoted by owner Jeffrey Lurie because he wanted to bring in Coach Chip Kelly, who's now the offensive coordinator for the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. Well, Chip Kelly was the head coach. That didn't pan out. What did Jeffrey Lurie do? He had never fired him. He just demoted Howie Roseman. What he did was he fired Chip Kelly and promoted Howie Roseman back to his rightful place. What does Howie Roseman do? He puts the team together. Nick Foles was your reserve quarterback because Carson Wentz, the starting quarterback at the time, gets injured. Nick Foles delivers a Super Bowl championship over Brady and the New England Patriots, beating them 41-33. Then a few years later, he gets back to the Super Bowl, but they lose 2 years ago to Kansas City. And now in his third Super Bowl, they won another one. Meanwhile, what happened to lead to this Super Bowl championship? After last season's debacle, where they lost like 6 times in the last 7 weeks of the season in the playoffs, including the playoffs to Baker Mayfield and those guys, he gets the offensive coordinator is gone, the defensive coordinator is gone. He hires 2 new guys, Vic Fangio for your defense, Kellen Moore for your offense. He tells Coach Nick Sirianni, we need you to scale back. We need you to be a game manager and an overseer, because if you are focused on one side of the ball, you can miss other things. You don't need to be calling plays and preoccupying yourself with all of that. You need to let somebody else do those things, and you just tell them what you're seeing and tell them what you want and leave the rest to them. And that's what Nick Sirianni has done. And all of those things turned out to work for goldenly for, the Philadelphia Eagles. So you get Saquon Barkley from the Giants. You pick up some backup from the Saints that was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year when he played for you this year. You draft not 1 but 2 rookies that's in your starting lineup and produce big things for you, including this guy DeJean, who had the pick 6 against Patrick Mahomes yesterday. This is all Howie Roseman. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, you got an owner that corrected the error of his ways. You have a GM that learned from it and excelled even further. You had a coach that needed to learn some things, and he elevated his level of play. You had a quarterback who lost the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He elevated his level of play. You got a running back that came from the Giants that was out on a mission with something to prove, and a whole bunch of supplementary parts that were like, wait a minute. We remember how it felt to lose 2 years ago to these dudes. We ain't doing it again. And oh, by the way, the defensive coordinator showed, because he had lost the Super Bowl before, what does he do? He brings the defense in the room and shows them the film of the entire game and shows how he lost and how he watches that every so often and how painful that memory is. And y'all don't want to feel the kind of pain that I have been enduring all of these years. All of these things they used as motivational tools to annihilate the Kansas City Chiefs last season.
One quick one, last one. The coach, I mean, there was a period of time where people were questioning him and so forth and so on, and his contract's coming up. I think he's in pretty good shape, don't you?
Yes, he is. He's absolutely. I mean, he's proven himself to be one of the better coaches. It's not just that he won. Look at who he beat. He beat Andy Reid. Andy Reid is one of the great coaches. Prior to last night, we were talking about Andy Reid, if he had won this Super Bowl, as being ranked as the second greatest coach in the history of football behind Bill Belichick. That's the kind of breadth that Andy Reid was being talked about. And yet last night he had no adjustments. He had no answer for what the Philadelphia Eagles were throwing at him. He never tried to run the football. They couldn't throw the football. The great Patrick Mahomes was tap dancing in the pocket like the late, great Gregory Hines or Fred Astaire. Yeah. I mean, it was hard to miss. I mean, it was something to behold. And all of this was spearheaded by Nick Sirianni and his game plan and what he wanted to do. So Nick Sirianni is being looked upon in an entirely different light today as one of the elite coaches that's been in the Super Bowl twice in the last 3 years and now is a Super Bowl champion. And sure, his future is bright as well as it should be. He shut a lot of people up, and he proved a lot of doubters wrong.
Stephen A., if people want to find you, there's like 412 places they can go. Where should they go?
I would just tell you First Take on ESPN every weekday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And, of course, my YouTube show / podcast on YouTube, the Stephen A. Smith Show on YouTube, as well as on iHeartRadio. Those are the two best places you can find me, at least for now. What's going to happen in the next few months remains to be seen.
I love it. And on Hannity every other day, right?
Practically every week. He calls me all the time. That's my buddy. You know he's crazy, right. But I love him.
Yeah. That's all right, brother. Well, have a safe flight.
Right,
God bless
care.
you, man. You too.
God bless you. Take care.